All right, so some of the things that make this kit special, the Ludwig Maple Classic drum set. Number one, it's something that's important to me is it's manufactured right here in North Carolina. And I'm a native born, lived most of my life in the state of North Carolina. And so to me, this is a local product, and I like supporting the local. Number two, this is just reading off my sheet of paper here. It's a 7-ply cross laminate North American maple drum set, and you know, has a 45-degree bearing edge. What all this stuff means to me. My most recent kit before this was a kit of Pearl Exports. Prior to that, I had a PDP kit for many years. I had a Yamaha Stage custom drum set. I had Tama Grandstars. I had Tama Stage customs. I've had many different acoustic drum sets over the years, and I can honestly tell you that this drum set, bar none, sounds better than any drum kit I have ever played. Now, I'm not set up in this room or in my home here to make a recording of an acoustic drum set and do it any kind of justice whatsoever. So what I'm going to attempt to do is attach some links in the description below the video if you want to check that out of the drum set actually being played, and that will give you a little bit more of an idea. And I don't know if that tonal quality will really come through in the video or not. A lot of times when you watch those videos, you're like, well, you know, yeah, okay, it sounds like drums. I can tell you that this kit probably has the best sound of any kit that I've ever played in my life. Now, one thing about it, it has a lot of attack. It has a lot of projection. The drum set really quote-unquote cuts. Now, of all things, that's probably not a feature that I was necessarily looking for in a drum set. After many years of playing the drums in lots of different environments, I can honestly tell you that I've been given a lot of feedback over the years. And all of it constructive one way or another, some of it positive and some of it more like, could you please just turn down some? And so I've got to say that, you know, that being said, never in my drumming career has anyone ever told me that, you know, your drums just don't project. So to get a drum set that projects even more, I don't know that that was necessarily a needed feature, but I can tell you that the tonal quality of the drums themselves, they're bar none, they sound better than any drum kit I've ever owned. The particular configuration I've got a 20-inch bass drum. I know 20-inch bass drums sound small. It's actually a 20 by 14, and that sounds small. But believe me, this is the best sounding bass drum that I've ever played. It has got more punch and more tone than any bass drum I've ever played. And that's probably my favorite drum in the entire drum set. As far as the toms are concerned, I've got an 8 by 12 and a 14 by 14 for my toms, and a 14 by 5 snare. And the snare has a nice crack to it. It has a nice ring. As you may have been able to tell when I kind of walked you around the drum set a little bit, the shells are completely open. There's no muffling on any of the shells. I'm not a big fan of muffling, though I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in a different video down the line, because sometimes that is a very much so a required thing. Cymbals that I've got hanging on this kit right now, Dream cymbals. I know those. That's probably a brand that is not necessarily all that super well known. Most people have heard of Zildjian or Paiste or Sabian. I got turned on to the Dream cymbals here in the last several months, and where I found out about Dream cymbals was actually a guy named Chris Reedus, and he also has a YouTube drum channel, and I'm going to go into much more detail in the next segment on Chris and Dream cymbals. But all I'll say is that these cymbals are produced really, the choices that I've made, and I know they've got a full line of cymbals and lots of different products to choose from, but the cymbals that I've chosen are very dark. When I play, 9 times out of 10, I'm having to figure out ways to control the volume. And typically one of the biggest offending voices in the drum set is the cymbals. And so, you know, years ago, I used to try to combat that by choosing smaller cymbals, and lo and behold, I've come to find out recently in research that that's actually probably the wrong way to go, because smaller cymbals cut. They cut through the mix, and that's not really what you're looking for when you're looking for warm sounding cymbals. So the choices that I've made, I've got a pair of 15-inch Bliss hi-hats. I have got a 19-inch paper-thin crash, and I've got a 22-inch vintage Bliss crash ride cymbal. And I'll try to leave links to the sounds of those cymbals in the description of the video. These are the choices that I've made as far as my acoustic drum set. And like I say, things that have led me down this road: sound quality, portability, and ergonomics of playing my drum set have led me down that road. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention also too the hardware on this particular drum set. It's the DW6000 series hardware, and I'll pan around the kit here again in a second. Moving the camera around is a little bit more arduous of a task than I realized, but the real feature, the thing that I like about the hardware, or the thing that was an initial selling feature for me, was the fact that it has a real retro look. The bases of the stands are flat, and it looks like something that you would have gotten back in the 1960s. And I'm a big fan of Ringo Starr, Charlie Watts, Mitch Mitchell, Ginger Baker. I'm a big fan of that whole 60s, early 70s sound. You know, the more I play the drums, the more I'm exposed to music, the more I realize that there's probably far more stuff that I actually like than that I don't like. But that being said, when I was making my hardware selection, I really wanted to go with that nice vintage retro look to the drum set. Obviously too, that kind of goes along with the finish. We'll talk about that in a second. But you know, the other, probably more important, more practical benefit is this particular hardware. It's really, really, really super lightweight. I've got one case that holds a hi-hat stand, two cymbal stands, and a snare stand, and that thing probably weighs in the ballpark of maybe 30 pounds. I'll try to get you the exact answer of what that thing weighs, but it's nothing, man. It is super, super, super lightweight. And going back to the whole traveling with the drum set, that's super important to me. Now, I will say that if you're doing a lot of outdoor gigs, you may want to use a little bit of caution. I think if you're on a windy day and you've got these big cymbals up top, you're kind of top heavy. No guarantees as to how that might turn out, but for what I do, for the applications that I use, this works really, really well for me. Obviously, this is the Black Oyster finish, and I'm sure that Ringo didn't play Ludwig Classic Maples at the time. Obviously they didn't have a manufacturing plant in North Carolina at the time, and I don't even know if I don't think this product line was available at the time. However, the wrapped finish that I chose for my kit is the Black Oyster finish, a la Ringo Starr, and I just think it looks absolutely awesome. When we panned around to the front of the drum set too, one other thing you may or may not have noticed is that the bass drum is not ported. I do not have a mic hole cut in my bass drum set. The type of gigging and playing that I'm doing right now, my bass drum is next to never mic'd, and so I don't need the head ported. I'm sure down the road at some point I probably will have to do that, and that will change the tone of what's being produced here, and we'll get into all that. We'll cross that bridge when we have to, but right now I'm leaving the head not ported, and that, I think that contributes to the roundness and of the tone that's produced by the drums. Another thing that I'll mention here, I don't know if you guys noticed when we walked around the drum set, is I've got my rack tom actually in a snare basket. Now, when this particular drum set was set up in the drum store, I went in and played it and spent a lot of time with it, and I really, really, really loved the way it sounded. And then I finally made the decision, I pulled the trigger, I bought the drum set, and I took it to band practice that very night. And I had two snare stands. I had one snare stand for my snare drum and one snare stand for my tom. And I set up the drum set and I played it that night. and I was absolutely really super happy with everything about the drum set, except the one thing that I did not know is when you put a tom in a snare basket, and I guess that really goes for your snare drum too, or maybe we're just not aware of it all the time, but when you put a drum in a basket like that, especially if you really tighten it down, it can kill the resonance of the drum. I mean, basically, if you stop and think about it, you're squeezing the bottom of the drum shell, you're squeezing the rim that is attached to that bottom head, and that's choking out the resonance of that head. So, you know, initially I was disappointed with that, but I did some research on it and tried to figure out what was happening and why it was happening. And what I came to is that you just need to use older snare stands that don't necessarily grip the bottom of the drum so much, and you know that kind of speaks to what's going on with your snare drum too. If you've got your snare basket really tightened down on your snare drum too, you may or may not be aware that that's affecting the tone of your snare drum as well. So anyhow, that's my Maple Classic drum set in a nutshell. Dream cymbals, DW 6000 ultralight hardware. All right, there are a handful of additional products that I wanted to get into before I close out this one particular video segment. One thing is going back to the whole cymbal selection thing. I do have one additional cymbal that sometimes I use and sometimes I don't use, and that is a 20-inch Dream Moon Ride. And you can see by the look of that cymbal, especially compared to the other cymbals, it's a completely unfinished cymbal. I mean, essentially it looks like it is just burnt. And I'll leave you to go to the Dream cymbal website to look at the methodology on exactly how that cymbal is created. A couple of things that I'll say about that: it has, number one, it has an excellent bell tone. Number two, it is a really super dry cymbal. When I want something that is going to produce a ride sound and then just get right out of the way, that is the cymbal to use. It has virtually no wash whatsoever. So looking once again at my cymbal setup, I've got the 22-inch Vintage Bliss Crash Ride, the 20-inch Moon Ride, the 19-inch Paper Thin Crash, and then the 15-inch Bliss hi-hats. Another product that I'd like to mention here is the drum dial tuning device. I use that. That's something that I got turned on to by the guy that sold me this drum set. Basically, you can write down your settings on a little sheet of paper there, which I have, and then when it comes time to tune your drum set, you can quickly and accurately go to those the settings that you have selected, you know, and get a real consistent tension all the way around the drum quickly, and then you can kind of fine tune it by ear from there. So the drum dial tuner is something that I use, and I highly recommend for consistent and high quality. And then the last product that I'd like to cover is the Roadrunner drum bags I use to transport my drums in. Obviously their bags are not going to protect your drums from like being dropped or being crushed or something like that, but I would highly recommend the Roadrunner bags to put your drums in. There's a little bit of padding in there, and that'll prevent things from getting scratched up when you're transporting them. When you're going from A to B, if you slam on brakes or something and everything kind of shifts in your car or your truck or your trailer or whatever it is that you're using to move your equipment, that will help to protect the drums and to protect the finish on the drums. All right, so that closes out this segment on acoustic drums, Ludwig Classic Maple drums, Dream cymbals, DW ultralight hardware, and Roadrunner drum bags. I want to thank everybody for stopping by. As I said earlier, please like the video if you like the video. Subscribe to my channel for more content, and leave comments. I'd love to interact with you, and I want to sincerely thank you guys for stopping by, and also I'd like to close out with, once again, that shout out to Rich Raw Dog Drums. By all means, please go check out his channel.